It seems as our first encounter with the non-dual message can be very confronting, which is true. This message is so counterintuitive to what we've been taught our entire life that it can set you back on your heels. Because what it's saying is that everything you've taken yourself to be up to this point is not the truth. It's not the true you. There is a piece of it that is real, but most of what we've taken ourselves to be up to this point is not real. It's not the truth, which is probably one reason why you're here in this message, is trying to discover the truth so that you can come back to some sense of peace and happiness within your life. But at first, the ego, the one you've mistaken yourself to be, is going to tell you that you probably don't want to be here. That this is not the message. There's something here that's just too intense. And the ego will come up with all sorts of reasons why you should not go down the path of non-duality. One of the first denials your ego will drum up is that this is just too intense. It's too extreme. We're talking about consciousness and existence and awareness and being. It's like, oh my, are you sure you want to spend time in this really intense, critical body of knowledge? It sure does sound like it's hard and it's time consuming. And yet the thing about it is that you are existing right now. You have a sense of being at this very moment. It is really the simplest thing, the simplest body of knowledge that you can encounter, because you are existing right at this moment. How much easier can it get? But that's how the ego works. It will say that this thing of non-duality, this message of non-duality is too intense and you shouldn't veer down that road of superior intensity. The ego will go on to say that yourself or your being or awareness or consciousness isn't real. Show it to me, the ego will say. Prove that it exists. Prove that it has what you say it has, or it is what you say it is. And the reason why the ego can't ever understand what being or consciousness is because the ego is a finite entity. And what's being pointed to in non-duality is the infinite. And whatever the ego cannot get its arms around and know it and label it, the ego says that that doesn't exist then. And because the infinite is way larger than this finite person, this finite ego we take ourselves to be, the ego can't get its arms big enough to get them around the infinite, to know the infinite and label the infinite as an object, and therefore know it. And because the ego cannot do this, it says that the infinite is not real, that your existence, your being, your awareness is not real. Yet again, you're existing at this moment. You're aware at this moment. How can it not be real? Now, it does not have an objective quality. That is the truth. Your being is not an object that your mind can know. But it does not mean that you are not experiencing it at this very moment. Your ego will use scare tactics to get you to do anything but head down the path of non-duality. It will say things like, who's going to do this life? Who's going to get out of bed and go to work and make money if I, the ego, no longer exist? And that is a very valid question, because we have taken ourselves to be the identity of the doer and the thinker and the knower in life. And when you see prior to the ego that what is doing the ego is actually what is doing life, which is yourself, then you realize, oh, who's going to do this life? The same thing that's been doing it my whole life. Myself, my being, the infiniteness that is coming through all 8 billion of us is going to be the one that continues to do this life. But again, it's a primary scare tactic of the ego. I see it in my comments all the time, like, you have to have an ego, because then who's going to do life? And that's just not the truth. So this is a big hurdle to get over. We can't deny it. But once you start to see through it into reality, into the one that's actually doing all of this manifestation, that scare tactic starts to go down until it goes to zero. Because the ego can't get its arms around and label the infinite and call it something that it knows, it therefore claims that your being has no value, which is absolutely absurd. This has all of the value. This is where everything in existence comes out of. This is what the quantum physicists have known for over 125 years. This is what the sages of the East have known for thousands of years, that this is the only quality. And because the ego can't know it, it therefore says it has no value. But when we study it, when we turn our attention onto being and study its qualities, we see that it has all the qualities that we want in life. We use terms like it's empty. And at first the ego goes, well, if something's empty, it can't have any value. Well, when you start to study that so-called emptiness, you find that it's actually fullness. And in that fullness, when you turn your attention to it and you try to find boundaries to it and borders or an edge, you realize there are no edges, there are no borders. And that is the definition of boundless freedom. What we all want. We want total freedom. If you continue to study it, you realize that it's whole and complete. It has absolutely no lack, because it is everything. It's the one substance of all of totality. And in that one substance, that is wholeness. And so you experience yourself as that wholeness. And the experience of wholeness, another way to say that is, it's the absence of lack. And the absence of lack is the definition of happiness. When you are not running around this world feeling a sense of lack, trying to gain and acquire and become and own things in this world to fill that sense of lack, that is known as happiness. As we continue to look into this space, this emptiness space of fullness, we realize that it has no resistance within it. It in itself is not agitated or irritated in any way. It accepts everything as it is. It's unconditional acceptance. And the definition of unconditional acceptance is peace. Who doesn't want peace? We all want peace. if we continue to study this empty fullness of our own being, we'll see that it doesn't have any gaps in it. It doesn't have any distance within it. It's total unity. And the definition of total unity is love. When you know yourself and others as the oneness of yourself, that is the definition of love. So the ego is going to try and do everything that it can for you to not hear this message. And the moment you allow yourself to see if this is true, for you to like peek behind the curtain to see if this message has any validity to it, you will see that it is everything that you are seeking your whole life. And then once that's realized, life just goes on as it is, except in a much more free, with peace, happiness, and love.